I'm using these 2 days, today and tomorrow, to kind of look at where the Cardinals are in terms of first 2 months of the season. And I already gave you one thing that surprised me. Not the entire month of May, but the pertinent thing is that they closed the month with a 15-8 record over their final 23 games. And if you just joined us, I was talking about, and I'll be brief because some people have been listening to us, and I don't want to, repeat this thing to bore them about it because they already heard it. But since the Cardinals began their winning streak, and 15 out of 23 is pretty good. We know that it could have been and should have been better, but they kind of flattened out, starting with that series in Cincinnati and then Cleveland and then losing the first game in Kansas City. So they went 4-5 in those 9 games. And, I think with just some timely hitting, that 4-5 could have been 6-3 or something like that. So, but that's how it goes. And that's one of the reasons too, why I'm not ready to declare, this team's really good now. Here we go. I'm just not there yet. But the one thing I did come up with is I was surprised that during this 15-8 run, the Cardinals have had the second best starting pitching ERA in the National League. I'm laughing because it's a crazy season. Let's face it. This is a highly unusual Cardinal season. So I guess nothing really, as much as I research, nothing really should surprise us because it's been kind of a curiously odd season so far. But if I'm going to point out the things they're not doing well and make sure that it sticks, because I don't do the usual thing of glossing over stuff, I not only like to point out good things, but I think it is my duty to point out good things. I mean, as I've said a million times, I can only work with the material that the Cardinals give me. So a lot of what I say at any given time will largely be impacted about how they're playing, whether it be good or bad. So that's kind of my policy, and I think I've been pretty loyal to it. But man, oh man, they do have some things to worry about, and I think the rotation is still in that area. They're not out of the woods yet, not by any means, but the recent trend has been good, and to ignore that would be petty. Now we got to see longevity in terms of better starting pitching. And by the way, I did give that stat about how well Miklasz and Flaherty have been since May the 17th. I mean, their combined ERA is great. It's under 2. But on the bad side, the other starting pitchers that are not Miklasz or Flaherty during this stretch that began May 7th, those guys have a combined ERA of 7.76. So that's what I mean. Cool. Basically, Miklasz and Flaherty are responsible for that ERA since May 7th being as good and solid as it is. They've been doing all the heavy lifting, and I got to give credit to Flaherty too, because I don't trust him in terms of consistency, but he delivered 2 or 3 really good starts during that stretch. So, but let's not pretend there are everything's fine now. No. Like I said, if their name wasn't Miklasz and Flaherty, the other starting pitchers during that time had a 7.76 ERA. And this is during a 15-8 stretch, right? That kind of tells you how fragile it is. In other words, they need more than just 2 guys pitching well. Maybe Liberatore will be that guy. If now that maybe they're going to put him in the rotation, it seems that way, and they're not going to keep messing around with him. So maybe he'll be the 3rd guy. I don't have much expectation of Waino. I'm sorry, but I don't. There's no reason to until you see some big change in the numbers, and I don't think there will be because the swing and miss, the strikeout stuff, it's just not there. Ball's in play a lot, and your defense isn't very good. More on that here in a bit. But other than always, being worried about the starting pitching, and again, I think it's still going to be a concern, but it's good to see at least a couple guys doing well. Now they got to get Montgomery going. They got to hope that Liberatore will do his thing and pitch well. And with Wainwright, I'm not trying to be, irreverent or irrelevant even. I don't even know what to say anymore. It is what it is. So it's kind of hard to maximize your starting rotation when one spot is absolutely reserved for a soon-to-be 42-year-old pitcher who just doesn't have his stuff anymore. I'm not being cruel. It's just fact-based opinion. So there's only so much you can do because really there's only 4 spots in your rotation that are in play. And it is not an ideal situation to say the least. But listen, we all knew this was going to happen. Well, most of us who live in the real world or at least a world of reality kind of expected this. It's not like we should be taken by surprise because number one, Waino's not pitching well at all, and his stuff has eroded to a point where it's unavoidable to recognize that, although most people do, and I don't know why. And number two, Ali Marmol's in a quandary with this, and even if he thought about down the road a little making a change there, they're not going to pull Wainwright out of the rotation. They're just not. So my point, again, and I'll sum it up and move on, is there's still concerns with his starting pitching. 2 guys are going really well, and that's a positive. But those 2 guys need more help. You can't have a rotation that consists of 2 people that you can reliably count on. Miklasz totally reliable. Flaherty getting there. But you can't have a rotation that's built on what 2 guys can do when all the other starters are getting slapped around. And Montgomery in particular needs to pick this up. During this 15-8 stretch the Cardinals are on, he's got a 7 ERA, Jordan Montgomery. That part's got to get right because he's capable of pitching very well. But this has to come to an end. He's got to get fixed. He's got to get right. He's got to become the pitcher that we know that he is. And then it's up to the kid. And then it's up to – no, I can't talk about Wainwright anymore. Right? I just can't. So that's that. All right, a couple other things Cardinals-wise. So we talked about – and I apologize, I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to make sure I organize my thoughts properly. So I still think the state of the starting pitching, while better lately, conditionally better, I still think it's the number one issue that they're going to have to deal with. The number 2 issue is the outfield. I mean, I'm not breaking any new ground here, but this outfield is it's in total disarray. Injuries to Carlson, Nootbaar, O'Neill, mediocre offense in part because of the injuries, in part poor defense. More on that in a second. A myriad of dizzying combinations. I mean, guys are playing all over the place. They're moving around constantly. You got infielders playing outfield, although in defense of that, I mean, it's just Brendan Donovan's one of them, and he's played a lot of outfield last year. Maybe not as much as I thought, but he did. You got a return to the minor leagues for the top prospect, Jordan Walker, who went back to his old swing and pretty much rejected what the Cardinals wanted him to do. In other words, we're talking nonstop chaos. According to Fielding Bible, the Cardinals have the second worst outfield in the majors in terms of defensive runs saved. And all those outfielders combined, they're minus 14. So, in other words, they've cost the pitching staff a lot of runs because they're not getting the balls they should get to. And there's several offenders in that, but Walker was the biggest when he was still up here. If you look at offensively, now look, it's not all about injuries, but injuries are a factor. Mostly it's about disappointing performances. If you look at the outfielders as a group, they're 24th in the majors in homers. They're 26th in OPS. They're 26th in slugging percentage. That's 26th out of 30. If you want to go fancy pants, they're 27th in wins above replacement, 28th in wins above average, and 29th in the base running metric used by Fangraphs. Jimmy, I just wanted to put some numbers to it. Wow. I figured there was kind of going into the season with this outfield, I knew there were going to be some variables in play that would kind of shift whether they were going to be really, really good, average, slightly below average, whatever scale you want to use. I did not expect, and y'all have my permission, not that you need it, you can do that anyway, to laugh at me because I thought this outfield was going to be pretty good. Because I should have known better, but I believe the beeswax about O'Neill, going through this off-season program where he was going to get more flexibility and he was stretching so he'd be more limber, and he wouldn't pull a muscle every time he reached for the Gatorade. Silly me. I laugh at myself, so you can laugh at me for buying this again. I thought people, Dylan Carlson opened the season and people were down on him. And as I've been saying lately, people have been way too up on him. And the reason is because just about everyone except Nootbaar has looked really bad or not, or just hasn't been impressive. But listen, let me get to the point. I just didn't think that, okay, it's only 2 months. I didn't think this outfield would be as bad as it is. That's all I'm saying. I'm really kind of surprised. Not shocked, but surprised for sure, because I thought at least it would be average.
I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed about. I was there with you on this. I really look when they said when you started your conversation about O'Neill, he's doing the workout stuff. He's going to change. I'm like, great, because that's the only thing holding him back is he just can't stay healthy. So he's going to get this new approach, and he'll be healthy, and at least he'll be able to be a factor in this lineup. He still can't do it, and it seems like it's gotten worse from where he's at right now. So you throw in that, you go, okay, even I'll say I messed that one up. Dylan Carlson is nowhere near just being an okay baseball player right now. Yeah, and what I mean by that is a guy who could just come in here, play some good outfield, get some doubles, drive in some runs here and there. He's not that guy, and he can't stay healthy. It's starting to creep in with him now is the health issue. You got to be able to go to the post, and we talk about that. Nootbaar is the second time he's had some health issues this year, so you're like, wow, all that stuff I didn't see coming. And the shame of it with Nootbaar is he was really starting to come into his own. The power wasn't quite there yet, but everything else, the walks, stability, driving in runs here and there, he pretty much has solidified the leadoff spot with his ability to get on base, and that's the one thing that seemed to start to be a positive for this baseball team, and now he's hurt now. Everything else, Jordan Walker, you thought he could be able to be a part of this. He's not there yet. Burleson has been in and out, but he's basically a rookie trying to figure it out. I mean, that when you just throw in all that stuff, it's like, wow, it's really awful right now. And you wouldn't think that this organization could be that awful in the outfield based on their past history. And you know what? They'll put a quality outfield together. Right now, it's not quality. It's killing them.
No, I mean, it lacks power. The defense is, like I said, second worst in baseball. Yeah. And you don't know who's going to kind of take charge. I think Nootbaar's obviously the best guy, and he's been having a good season, but he continues to get interrupted. Now, look, there was a time where he was not hitting the ball as hard as he was last year, which was a big factor in his success. But people are sort of overstating that, and they're making more of it than it really is, because I just checked his StatCast stuff, and his average exit velocity is down a little, and so is his hard hit rate, but it's just not down all that much from last year, and I think it's been climbing, so he's going to be fine. He's just got to be a little more careful, because he seems to be vulnerable to kind of not in a Tyler O'Neill way, but weird things happen to him. Just back spasms because he bounced into a wall. And I mean, he's got to stay in a lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because at this point, I'm going to assume he's going to go in the IL. Now, I don't know that, but just the way the Cardinals roll, just the way they go, I'm going by their history. Oh, he's fine. We're just going to give him this extra day, and then we got 2 days off. He's fine. Well, we're not concerned about him at all. And I don't know something. So I'm just gonna play the odds and say, well, once again, they completely underestimated how much a guy was banged up. I hope he doesn't go in the IL, but would it surprise anyone if he does? You just with these people, right. You don't know. The Walker thing. Listen, he looms as an obvious factor. And I agree with Jordan. Excuse me. I agree with Derek Gould, who said, I think ideally what he believes the Cardinals want is Walker in left, Carlson in center, and Nootbaar in right, and that would give you some good backup options. And Burleson's hitting better. I hope people are going to ease up on the hate of him. And Oscar Mercado has done well as an extra outfielder. I don't know where that leaves O'Neill, but I would say don't worry about it.
I'm there with you. I'm like, yeah, not a factor. Not worried.
I'm sure that they're going to give him a chance to play, but if he ever gets back, whenever it is that he gets back, if they feel like they're obliged to let him play to see where he is, he better hit the ground running. He better hit the ground hitting, because they ain't going to give him some 3-week trial. We got to see where he is. Well, yeah, okay. If you give him a few days and not much is happening, it's time to move on. I mean, I don't know why they would go back there anyway. I mean, they've had their expectations shattered just about every season except for one. But here's the thing about Walker: is it something or is it nothing? I don't know. And over the last couple weeks, his offense has really taken a good turn. But I noticed the last 2 games, it's been a struggle for him. And listen, I know it's only 2 games, but for whatever it's worth, it may not be worth much, but I still want to mention it. His last 2 games, 2 for 14 with 6 strikeouts.
Oh.
And so that brought, you know what that did, Jim Heward? It brought back memories of what happened in spring training.
Yes.
Very
accurate. Yeah.
So I don't know when they'll bring him up. I assume they will be bringing him up. I don't feel the need to make a prediction, because what's the point of that? But I think Derek Gould believes he believes that they're making serious considerations about that very thing. I mean, this is not a whimsical thing. They're seriously thinking about it. So what that means, we'll see, I guess, right? Another problem with the Cardinals, and this one needs to be recognized because it is not a minor deal. All right, you got a starting rotation that is 26th in strikeout rate and has yielded the second highest contact rate among MLB rotations. Which means the ball is in play a lot more often in terms of just a percentage. The ball is really in play a lot this season, as it was pretty much last season. It's just that the Cardinals, and do not give them the cop-out about the shift, because they weren't real good when they used the shift last season. It didn't pay off that much, and as I've said many times, the Cardinals used the shift last season. I think they were 26th or something like that, ballpark estimate, 25th, 26th, in terms of how often they put on the shift. So it was never a big part of their defense last year anyway. But there are problems, and these problems cannot be overlooked, because the more that the ball is in play, and the ball will definitely be in play for the Cardinals starting pitchers. The occasional game, maybe not like Miklasz, but generally speaking, the numbers tell us conclusively that they don't miss bats, they don't strike out many. So many baseballs in play. So you need help. They need a lot of help from their defense, and they got it the last 2 seasons. If you look at 2021 and you look at 2022, here's what we got. They were in 2021. They were second in the majors with 81 defensive runs saved, and they followed that up last season by ranking 4th in the majors with 67 defensive runs saved. But now that defense, which was so very strong and so crucial to the pitchers, now that defense has turned into a pretty much a full-blown liability, because they they are now, and the fielding Bible stuff, I feel like I got to explain this. There's always a lag when in between time that they update their defensive run save standings and all that. Like they don't do it like every morning. Sometimes it's a few days, 5 days, 6 days, which I appreciate because it tells me they're being thoughtful about this. They're not rushing into it, and that's why I love Fielding Bible. But anyway, in the most recent reveal, which was today, the Cardinals rank 24th now among Major League teams with a minus 11 defensive run saved. Minus 11 runs saved. Contrast that to, again, what we talked about the previous 2 seasons. They've gone from top 5 over the 2 seasons, and now they're down at 24th. I mean, that is a collapse of your defense. There's only 2 positions, not counting catcher, because I don't think defensive run saved ought to be applied to catchers. It's just not. It's not a good formula. I don't even know why they do that. But anyway, other than catcher, the only plus positions defensively are first base and the pitchers themselves. And we ain't talking about a big plus. We're talking about barely over average, although I think Goldie's better than that. Those are the only 2 plus positions. They have several that are neutral, 0, where they're not helping you, but they're not hurting you. And to me, this is a shocking decline. It's just amazing you can go from being so great at this to having your defense is now a liability. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. And when you have to play people out of position, I think when you're moving them all around, although last season that wasn't a problem. But there's so much instability on this team in terms of just moving personnel here, there, everywhere. You know, I think it's just kind of taking a toll. I really do. But how can the starting pitching, how can we really ask that? Well, we can ask them to be better. Don't get me wrong. In some instances, depending on the pitcher, much better if they're capable of it. But without the help that they're used to getting from marvelous defense in 21 and 22, what possibly could be the upside of this starting rotation when they're no longer protected by their defense? It's a concern, man.
It's huge. It's awful. We get a text says, Bertie, they teach pitch to contact. That's what they're teaching.
Well, yeah,
them, and
of course.
It's terrible.
Of course. They claim otherwise, but I don't see any evidence that this has changed much. They've had a low strikeout rate as starting pitchers for years. Dave Duncan's gone, folks. I mean, I don't know why. What's so hard? You look around baseball and you look at all the hard throwers, and you look at hard throwers in the rotation, and yet the Cardinals keep going into the skirmishes with a rotation that does not strike people out very often, and also they get the swing and miss stuff's really bad, so the ball's in play all the time. And that doesn't work in today's game. It just doesn't.
No.
And the limitations on the shift has made it even more problematic.
Another thought on the outfield that stuck out to me, let's say, in the last couple of weeks, because of, look, they've had to do this out of necessity because of the injuries. But when you got to put Edman in one spot and you put Donovan in the other, not saying they're bad players and they're not going to play hard, but we've seen a couple instances where, one, Edman got hurt because he ran onto, Newbar out there in center field out at the warning track of one of those plays. When that kind of stuff happens, Brian, I go, yeah, that happens because you don't have consistency. You got a guy who's going to play hard, but he's playing out of position. It's not, there's not the great communication. That's why that collision happened. There was another play a couple days later where it was Arenado was going back for a ball, and it was Donovan playing in left field. He comes running in, and Arenado almost gets to a ball, bounces off his head. But the reality is a left fielder probably should have had it, but because it's not a guy who's out there consistently, you get a little miscommunication and balls drop. Things happen. That kind of stuff happens a lot when you start moving guys around. Mercado, the last week, I don't know what his deal is in the outfield. He's got a little inconsistency. He made a play in center field last night, but he tripped and fell. Like, what's going on there? He bobbled a couple balls in Cleveland that cost, I know, at least a base runner and a run on one of the nights that he was out there. It's just too much inconsistency with that outfield is causing more and more problems defensively with it, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's frustrating. But they got to find a way to get it fixed because there's no excuse for them not having good defense because they do have nice players. Now, you're playing some guys out of position, but they do have guys that can make plays. There's too much inconsistency there, so it's frustrating.
Yeah, it really is. They need stability out there, to your point, just to reinforce it. And I hope that if Walker comes up and Carlson can stay healthy and play good defense, maybe hits slightly above average or whatever. Again, I have modest expectations, but if that happens, they can roll with that outfield alignment. Now, listen, not every single day, whether people are fans of Burleson or not, because he has a left-handed bat, I think especially, I believe that he'll still be part of this outfield. He won't be a regular starter, but he'll play enough, and he can be used at DH when Gorman's playing second against a right-handed pitcher. But they can have a lot more stability in their outfield, and that can only be a good thing,
Yeah.
Because we've seen what instability has led to. And also, not making good decisions on talent, which is kind of an affliction that they have. Outfield's been that way for a while. So that's where it starts. I mean, I'm not going to recap the starting pitching, but it's still a concern, even though there's been some good progress because of two guys, Miklasz and Flaherty. But the outfield is just total chaos. That's number one. And, number two is the defense has pretty much maybe collapsed is too strong of a term, but it has definitely deteriorated based on the standards they set for themselves in 2021 and 2022,
Yeah.
So those are three pretty big concerns if you ask me. And listen, I know they've had a downturn offensively, and it's been recognized. I've talked about it. I've given the stats. I've isolated on what certain players are doing or not doing. I mean, during this stretch since the real hot streak ended, you've had a group of pretty important players just not hit much at all, and that's no way to go about it. I mean, you can't get through a lot of games without big contributions from Gorman, Arenado. I think DeYoung was on that list because he did incredibly well for a time. He's tailing off now. Does that mean he's going to stay that way, or is he going to rally? You can't. If you put Contreras on that list, you can't. And I think Edman was the other guy. During the most recent stretch, which is now 4 wins, 5 losses. They've averaged 2 runs per game, and they've hit 177, I believe, and they've hit 095 with runners in scoring position, and this includes last night. And the 5 guys that basically have done very, very little: Gorman, Arenado, DeYoung, Contreras, and Edman. I mean, like I said yesterday when I talked about this, how are you going to pile up runs when 5 of your regulars and 5 guys that have at times or a lot this season contributed a ton of offense, when those bats just go, freezer cold? Mm-hmm. How do you expect to score a lot of runs that way? I know you got to rely on your complete team, and I'm talking about the position players, but you've got a manager who, sort of got into this, hate to say it, but this kind of Mike Matheny phobia. So, we need 3 catchers. No, you don't. You don't need 3 catchers, especially if the third catcher hardly ever plays. So, at a time where you have so many regulars going cold, and they're going to come out of it, they are, you've wasted a bench spot on a third catcher that you barely use. Maybe that's Mozeliak more than Marmol, or maybe they agree on that. I just didn't understand the panic. Oh, we got to get a third catcher up here. Well, Contreras should be starting most of the games. Kisner has actually been hitting pretty well. So why do you need a third guy on your bench that you don't use when And then the same people, I'm talking about Cardinals people, they're pointing to Kisner and saying, he's really done a nice job. And, he's really helped us offensively. So, okay, again, why would you need a pinch hit for him then? And who's there to pinch hit for that? Because your bench is really limited now because there's always an injury where the player's still on the roster, but you don't use them. And now they got this nonsense with the third catcher, Barrera. It just doesn't make much sense, does it?
No. In fact, the one time we've seen Barrera was in that extra inning game in Cincinnati. He had the pass ball, which led to a runner moving up, and they lost that game in the 10th inning, bottom of the 10th inning, because the runner got moved up to third. It was an easy score. I mean, that's just how that worked out. Question from a couple texters here for you.
Yes.
One asked, how about Moises Gomez as an option in the outfield now?
I don't think they're going to go that way. No. I mean, I'm not shooting down the suggestion, but I'm just being realistic. Let me try to punch him up. The thing about I'd like to see him. I'm not saying that, so let me clarify. I'm not saying no way, no how. I just don't think it's going to happen. Because if it was going to happen during this time where everyone's hurt and the offense is struggling offensively, they would have given him a look during this time that, I don't know if they're through this time with the subpar outfield, but certainly he would have been, if they thought that highly of him, and he is on the 40-man roster, I think they would have turned to him by now. You see what I'm saying? Again, I hope I don't sound like I'm being disrespectful to the person that text messages because there's no reason, there's no reason to, because any suggestions are good suggestions. But if you look at where he is, he's got 11 home runs at Memphis. That's good, but we also see a lot of guys hit home runs in AAA. And his strike – Lottie.
Here's the number, right?
His let me get my handy calculator out. It'll just take a second, but you want the answer. He has struck out at a rate of, it's not as bad as I thought. It's about 29%. Maybe, it's just about 29%. That's not good because it'd be a lot higher in the major leagues. But he does have the power. He doesn't get on base much. He's kind of a feast or famine guy. I mean, everything just sort of centers around his slugging percentage, and he's just under 500 for the season. The last 7 days he's been really hot, and maybe that's what's catching some attention. The last 7 days he's got 3 homers, and he's slugging like 737. So I don't know. I mean, then you go back, if you take it over the last month, he's slugging 624, which is good too, and his OPS is really good. So I don't know. The Cardinals never seem to know what they have, so I don't,
good point.
If they bring him up, I would not expect much simply because this is Cardinals baseball with this front office, right?
Yeah, I'll throw in one other thought here with him, and again, I only have a chance to see him when he was down there in spring training. He didn't look like he was going to help out the defense in the outfield at all.
No, so you're very, very kind. Yes, exactly right.
It's another adventure when the ball goes out there. I don't know if you want that, again, as another option. I get what you're saying, bat. We need bat, but we got a whole bunch of bats that are trying to do that, and a whole bunch of guys that can't catch the ball right now is a problem, which when you just pointed out, pitch to contact is the staff, and you need guys that can catch the ball.
And I think what the Cardinals front office and manager are thinking is that, look, we're going to get Carlson back soon. Walker's getting close. Hopefully Nootbaar's not going to be out for, more than whatever. And then we can plant those guys and have some stability. And then you have some capable guys like Burleson on the bench that can, play against certain right-handers or whatever. And I'm in favor of that too. And the defense, except for Burleson, although with Burleson it's more about how bad he looks rather than how he actually does. And he's a minus fielder. He's below average. Don't get me wrong, but there are worse. Walker was worse. Walker was not even close to Burleson defensively, and I know that sounds hard to believe. I ask you to trust me when I say that because I've researched all this. They just need to get to that point in time again where they have stability, and then it goes from there. What do you have? What else could you do?